Hello again. Welcome to episode 2 of, we'll say, the Media Tech Business Forum. Today's topic is vinyl, more sustainable than you think. I'd like to welcome you all, of course. I'm Brian Ekus. I'm the president of Colonial Purchasing and the co-founder of Making Vinyl. Today, I just want to go through a few things before I make the introductions of our moderator, Larry Jaffee, that if you have to answer a telephone call or you need to take a bathroom break, the replays will be available of this session and the past session that we also did at mediatech.org. We are also in the midst right now of seeking speakers for the next Making Vinyl that will be held, we'll say, November 3rd through the 5th online. If you're interested to be a speaker, feel free to reach out to myself or Larry Jaffee. Also, a little bit of a schedule update. Our next episode, which is Where Did You Hide the Cassette, is now been changed to September 1st. If you've already registered for that, you should have gotten an update note. If you haven't registered for that yet, you can do so at mediatech.org as well. And as I mentioned previously, and you've probably seen this already, that the next Making Vinyl and Physical Media World, which will be our first in-person event, will be held in May 2022, not 2020 as I have on the slide here, in Frankfurt, Germany. The exact dates will be announced soon, and it'll be great if this all works out that we can see each other again. And then following that, we're going to come back to the United States, North America in fall of 2022. So we've got, we'll say, a lot of things in the works. And then if you want to be a part of this, we welcome you to do so. Of course, we can't make this work without sponsors. So if you would be interested to be a sponsor of this particular business forum or of a Making Vinyl event, feel free to reach out to me at brian@makingvinyl.com. And today, if we really encourage participation. So if you would like to ask a question to one of the panelists, please do so through the Q&A feature, or if you'd like, you could do, what we would like to do too is bring you up on screen. So take this chance to take a look to see if you want to be on screen, but we would love to have you on screen just to ask the question. So interaction is definitely encouraged. And all of this as well with our next moves and what we're going to be doing, you can follow us on social media. MediaTek now has a social media channel for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So if you want to see what we're doing besides looking at the website, you can follow us on social media. So with that being said, I'm going to now introduce today's moderator. It's Larry Jaffee. He's the co-founder also of Making Vinyl, and I'll turn it over to you, Larry, and thanks very much.
And nice seeing you again. Nice working with you again. I'm wearing a shirt called Record City. This is my new favorite record store in Brooklyn, New York. I would say they're the ultimate in sustainability because they sell no new records. Unfortunately, that doesn't really help us as an industry. But on the other hand, it shows how vinyl 2.0, and I sort of referred to this revitalization of the industry as 2.0, is much different from the heyday of the 1970s and 1980s when the volumes were just so enormous. There was a estimate that currently 160 million records are being produced globally. But the reality is 320 million is the demand. And that's one of the reasons for all this backlogs. And so anyway, with climate change is a reality right now. When you go back to the 70s and 80s, they weren't thinking about being efficient environmentally in their plants. So in coming up with this event, conceiving this event, we decided we would go diverse in terms of our participants and give different perspectives of where they believe sustainability is. So with that being said, if you could all please bring up your audio and video and introduce yourselves. I guess on my screen, at least, Nika is the first, his first one, so might as well just go what I see. And then after her, Sharon. Nika, you want to start?
Okay. Hi, I'm Nika Koch. I work for Sony Music in operations and supply chain. And part of the many projects that I've been involved in, as some of the suppliers that are on know, is I was involved in product compliance and environment sustainability topics. And I visited all of our vinyl plants as part of this to make sure that they're all as green as possible and doing the right thing, obviously.
Sharon.
Hi everyone, my name's Sharon George. I'm in the UK. I'm at a university called Keele University, right in the centre of the UK. I'm a senior lecturer in environmental sustainability and green technology, and I teach about things like circular design, and I research things like environmental impact of and waste reduction and just basically cutting CO2 emissions in everything that we do.
Domenic, you.
Yeah, sure. I'm Domenic DeCaria. I'm currently the technical director with the Vinyl Institute, which is based in Washington, D.C. I personally live in Cleveland, Ohio, rock and roll capital of the world. My role is really about supporting our sustainability initiatives through a lot of science, a lot of research, and helping to really craft the right fact-based messages that we all need as an industry to demonstrate our sustainability initiatives.
And Matt?
I'm Matt Earley. I'm the president of Gotta Groove Records. We're a vinyl pressing plant in Cleveland, Ohio. And we're proud of our efforts to make high quality records with as little environmental impact as possible.
And Ugo.
Hi, I'm Ugo from CAF Milan. We are old compounders. We started in 1967, and at the end of last century, we started shifting from some older ingredients, let me call them ingredients. It sounds probably a little bit less hazardous, to arrive to 2010, when we could offer to the market a compound virtually free from hazardous labeling. So let's say that we started several years ago. We banned lead, for example, 20 years ago.
So as everyone can see, we have a diverse transatlantic panel here. And that's for a reason. Actually, Europe has been in the forefront of making sure that vinyl records are sustainable using lead-free compounds. And, as Matt will probably talk in a little bit, there are more and more new pressing plants that are going that route. But Domenic, before we get to Domenic, I just want to say that we have a couple of polls to find out who you, the audience, are. So, Andre, can you bring up those? So yeah, please, everyone, tell us what sector you represent, and also geographically, where are you tuning in from? So, okay, and can we now pull up Domenic's presentation?
Yeah, 1 second. Let's have the polls finish for another 5 to 10 seconds, and I'm gonna shut it down now so we can just see the results all together, and then I'm gonna pull up the presentation of Domenic.
Oh, great.
So I'm pulling it now. So here we go. And everyone should see now the overview. Cool. I'm gonna pull up the presentation for you guys.
All right, so I guess I'll just kind of get started with what I was going to talk about, and the slides will catch up. So, again, like I mentioned, my name is Domenic, and I'm with the Vinyl Institute. The Vinyl Institute was founded in the early 1980s, really in large part to do a lot of technical scientific studies in support of the PVC industry, really in defense against overregulation at the time. This was already 10, 12 years into the Clean Air Act. A lot of major improvements had been made from the early 1970s up until that time. And it was really just a matter of, demonstrating, hey, this is, these products are safe, these processing methods are safe. And we just, have always been science-based and fact-based in everything that we've done. Over the last few years, you can tell that the emphasis has shifted. It's very much sustainability oriented at this point in time. The global pandemic has, you can switch to the next slide. The global pandemic has taught us quite a bit that vinyl really is a quality product of choice. Sorry, Andre, can you move the slides? So, between PVC blood bags that help extend the life of blood and medicines, PVC can withstand necessary harsh cleaning regimens and disinfection protocols that the medical community requires. So our products have a sustainability story in terms of how they're made. And also, they're highly recyclable, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but it's also about the durability of the product, and not just where they're used, but what they enable as well in terms of the durability of the systems that they protect and support. So we'll get into this all a little bit more. Next slide, please. I wanted to just share a little bit of context. I think that the numbers that Larry was mentioning a little bit ago for how many records are being produced each year in the context of the US, I guess we're talking about the US right now, although this is globally much bigger, but in the United States, resin production is somewhere around 15 billion pounds per year. And domestic resin consumption is around 11 billion pounds a year. The United States is a net exporter of PVC resin. So if you look at the pie chart here, you can see that pipe and rigid pipe and tube, conduit, that sort of thing, is almost 50% of the production that gets made. And this is in terms of the consumption within the US. So then you have windows and doors, you've got wire and cable, film and sheet products, siding. So there are just so many different products in building and construction that rely on the durability of those materials to be able to survive 30 years, 50 years, 100 years in some cases within that application. And sometimes in life safety systems and in critical drinking water applications and medical applications. So, it's just to put it into context about when we say that we have a sustainability initiative going, it's across this entire value chain, and it's end to end from the suppliers all the way through recyclers. And that the way that we've done that, like I said, in order to, you can go to the next slide. In order to maintain our legal license to operate, we work very closely with regulators to ensure that the continuous improvement of our industry in terms of compliance continues to meet stronger requirements. But in order to maintain our social license to operate, what the market wants and what the market expects out of us, our industry has been dedicated to formalizing and driving sustainability initiatives across that entire value chain, and really to demonstrate continuous improvement along our sustainability journey. So the industry came together more than 6 years ago to form the Vinyl Sustainability Council. And we did that so that we can move forward on this journey again across this entire supply chain. We also founded the Vantage Vinyl Verification Program, which is an end-to-end supply chain sustainability program that verifies companies who participate as being responsible producers of vinyl products, vinyl materials, some of the additives that go on, or responsible recyclers. So that is the way that we are currently measuring and reporting on the status of sustainability in the industry. And in addition to that, we have our sustainability journey report, which we put out last year, and we're going to put out sort of the next annual update here in the next, hopefully, couple of months. Next slide, please. So here you can see we have close to 50, actually now more than 50 past and present members of the Vinyl Sustainability Council, including all the major vinyl trade associations in the United States and Canada, all Vinyl Institute members, at least one major retailer in Lowe's. The primary membership background here is in building and construction products, but we are really actively trying to grow that. And so we'd love to have more participation from the vinyl record industry. I think it would be a fantastic partnership between the two of us. You know, while this collaboration is unique, you know, we're trying to unite the, you know, and partner everybody together so that we can all achieve one goal around this need to be more sustainable. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that our entire program is founded on this list of guiding principles. And I'm just giving you a few of the guiding principles that we have. I know this is already a long list and a lot of text, but trust me, this is at least twice as long. These are the commitments that anybody who's in the Vantage Vinyl program and is part of the Vinyl Sustainability Council, they are starting to commit to these. And the verification program just demonstrates their, I guess, verifies their commitment by how they report on how they do each of these. A couple I wanted to bring to your attention, if you go to the next slide, for this industry, I know that minimizing waste is really critical, as well as reusing, recycling, and recovering materials in accordance with sustainable materials management principles, and also avoiding the use of lead and hexavalent chromium and cadmium as ingredients in vinyl components. Again, keep in mind, this is something that's happening across the entire vinyl industry. There hasn't been lead or cadmium in piping products in decades, if ever. There hasn't been, anything in the flooring industry in terms of some of the phthalate plasticizers in a number of years. And a lot of these have been done in response to market requests and market initiatives. But at the same time, it's because we're also trying to do more with less. We're trying to do more in terms of safer ingredients and additives. And that, again, fits in with our principles. So moving to the next slide, you just wanted to give a sense on the recycling side. The EPA talks about plastics, landfill, and municipal solid waste as being a 50 billion pound problem. And you can see that PVC is actually a very small component of that. But if you take that number in context, that 1.4 billion pounds in landfill a year, in 2019, we recycled over 1.1 billion pounds of PVC. Think about that for a second. That's more than 40% of the material that would be available to go to landfill was recycled. Now, that's not the same number as the 15 billion that we're making. Most of that's going into durable products that last, and that includes vinyl records. Okay, so let's think about the durability aspect in terms of recycling. But we can do better, we can do more. There's a lot of regrind material used in production that goes back into products across the entire value chain. As I mentioned, life safety systems earlier, there's a lot of regrinded material that goes back into the injection molded fittings that get installed in a life safety system for fire sprinklers. So those are just some of the things to consider in terms of recycling. Here's just a graph that shows how we've actually, next slide. Here's just a graph as we're showing just how we've increased recycling over the last 3 reporting years, which is every 3 years. We're working on looking at an updated study now. And we're committing to doing more and continuing to grow this. Right now, we're actually growing pilot projects. There's one that we're doing in the vinyl siding industry. There's one specifically we're doing in the single ply vinyl roofing industry, which is another great use case. For those who are in Canada, you might know the Toronto Sky Dome or whatever it's called now is the Rogers Center. And that roof that was taken off was 30 years old. That was a vinyl roof. It was recovered and is being recycled, and a new vinyl roof was put on. But that's that's the kind of thing you can do. And there's a lot of applications that are high profile, but also low profile that you just get the job done and recover and recapture as much as you can. So our industry's goal is to increase our post-consumer recycling by 10% over the 2016 number. It's going to take millions of dollars of investment, and we're dedicated to doing that. So last but not least, I guess just moving on to the last slide here. This is just an example of the top 5 end markets for vinyl recyclers. The recyclers in our Vinyl Sustainability Council are very active listeners to what is happening in the market. They want to find new sources of material. All of them are continuously learning how to use materials, whether it's maybe new levels of mixed material, such as paper being like a paper label, for instance, on a vinyl record. There's new ways that they can use that material as ground up into certain applications. There's also new separation methods that are emerging. We're investing in new technologies with a lot of whether it's academic researchers or startup companies on how to separate some of these materials that are mixed media. So at the end of the day, there's a lot going on in this industry right now, and I wanted to really stress that to everybody. We just completed our annual Vinyl Sustainability Council Recycling Summit yesterday. That will be available on recording if you're interested. Come to our website at vantagevinyl.com and you can find a way to download it. It was 4 days of amazing content about how to recycle materials, and gets you a sense of who to network with in this industry. And we really would ask you to consider joining next year's summit, as well as to really join us in this movement of moving the sustainability of the vinyl industry forward. So with that, I'll leave it with the last slide, and you can kind of get a sense of how to reach us on social media. And again, join us as you can. Thanks.
So thanks to everybody for using the chat, because some of you identified yourselves as other, and what that included were distributors, cutting engineers, brokers, collectors, and artists. So speaking of artists, I thought maybe it would be best to shift over to Nika and talk about what's going on at Sony, which obviously is one of the 3 global major label record groups, and what kind of policies might be in place regarding sustainability.
Okay, obviously I can't go into great detail, but since Sony Music is obviously part of a big electronics company, we have a few policies in place that apply to the whole corporation, and plastic reuse is quite a big topic at the moment as well. The one policy which I kind of very briefly touched on earlier when I introduced myself was that we're certifying manufacturers, looking at their operation, making sure that the materials they use comply with legislation. So for example, in Europe, I'm mostly speaking for Europe here, just to make that clear, and hopefully people like Matt and Domenic can fill in the US parts. In Europe, there is a bunch of legislation in terms of which substances can be used in materials such as plastic. So lead, cadmium, chromium, etc., that is all already banned, and has been for a number of years. So all of our vendors, vinyl vendors, purchase their compound from mostly European suppliers, as far as I'm aware. So the material is already free of banned substances. In addition, because of the rules that the EU has brought in around becoming carbon neutral by 2050, I believe, a lot of the vendors are also looking at improving their own environmental carbon footprint. So they have closed circuit systems for water, heat, energy, all of that. Some of them have solar panels. So I think a lot is being done, and that is the sort of thing that I'm looking at as a Sony auditor, if you like. And yes, on top of that, obviously artists are also now asking for products to be more environmentally friendly. And there are a number of things that we can do. You can look at using certain paper stocks, make sure the paper is FSC certified, for example. A number of our vendors have very cleverly come up with a name for reusing PVC. So they are now, they can offer using 100% recycled compound to make a record. I think this probably works best if it's a single color record, but there are also some that offer grinding up any color and then you get basically a surprise mix. which I'm sure can be a good marketing thing as well. Yeah, so that's kind of the main focus or the main approach that we're taking at the moment. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Nika. Why don't we shift over to the, so we started with the content side, which obviously is the driving force of why we're doing all this. But Matt, could you pick up on, from the pressing plant perspective, Gotta Groove's strategy in terms of sustainability, I guess right from the start? Well, you're about 10 years old now, right?
Yeah, actually 12. It'll be 12 in August. We opened in 2009. So yeah, when we started, one of the really attractive things to us about making records was that it was a relatively low environmental impact type of manufacturing. And we believe that manufacturing is important to the economy, that, you can't just be a service economy, you have to make things to be a successful economy. So that's one of the big things that we liked about records, making records, that is, besides listening to them in our early stages. So we did make the decision early on to be a lead-free pressing plant. Back then, there were actually a lot more leaded options. It seems like over the years, a lot of the things that used to be, or certain colors that used to be only available as a leaded formula, have changed. So it seems like there's a lot more tin-based options now than there were 12 years ago, which is a good thing. But yeah, that was one of our big decisions early on. So speaking from a pressing plant perspective, another nice thing about this type of manufacturing is most of the things that you use are able to be either repurposed, reused, or recycled. So we're talking a lot about vinyl, obviously, because that's the biggest component in a record. So most of the vinyl is regrinded and then reused in other records. So very little is actually scrapped at the end of the day. It's with the black vinyl, it's almost always a blend. I mean, we have a couple of customers that will insist upon a only virgin records, and we cater to them as much as possible. But as a default, and really this, I can only speak for our plant firsthand, but I do believe that really all pressing plants are regrinding a good portion of their scrapped records, just because it makes financial sense. It would be expensive to have to throw away everything. So it's nice that there is that financial incentive for any pressing plant to be recycling the vast majority of the vinyl that doesn't make it into marketable records. We also, over the years, have sold scrapped records to other industries that repurpose them for lots of other reasons. One of the big ones was eyeglassware. There's a company that makes eyeglasses out of recycled records. So, something that Domenic had said earlier that struck me was, these are durable products that you want your records to last. So you specifically want to use a material that is built to last. And that's why PVC is such a successful material for making records. But obviously there's other industries that want the same longevity in their products. So at the end of the day, we can sell some scrap to them as well, which is nice. But going beyond just the vinyl, I mean, really everything in the process, start to finish, is recycled or reused. So with lacquers, the aluminum, first we use lacquers, or we use relacquers in our plant in the stacks of records that are cooling. It's a nice, the aluminum 14-inch discs is a good platter to let the records cool on racks. And I do know that a lot of plants use them for that purpose. Over time, eventually they get too beat up and you can't use them for that purpose anymore. Well, they're made out of aluminum. Aluminum's recyclable. We've actually done experiments with relacquering used aluminum discs from lacquers. Nothing marketable yet, but the hope is that maybe someday we'll be able to actually reuse the aluminum discs to make new lacquers with them. In the plating, stampers are about the purest form of nickel that you can get. So you just don't throw them away when you're done. If they're if their useful life is expired, you're going to sell them to a metal recycler. There's just no way around it. Again, it's the financial incentive to recycle, but yeah, none of that metal is getting going into the ground. And then of course the paper products, you know, if they're scrapped jackets, scrapped whatever, paper's an easy thing to recycle. It's recycled all the time. So really from a pressing plant perspective, there's very little waste that actually winds up going to the landfill. Almost everything involved is either reused or recycled, which is, to me, has always been a really attractive part of the business.
Thanks for mentioning the packaging, because that's very true in terms of sustainability is a whole that we could do a whole nother webinar on that, I guess. So let's move it over to the materials side of things. Ugo, can you talk a little bit about how much demand you're seeing? Now, obviously, Europe is a little bit different story than, say, in the US in terms of using lead-free materials to make records. But are you also seeing demand from overseas, like non-European pressing plants?
Yes, it's extremely interesting to see how older ideas have been set completely different in the last 5-6 years. Probably, of course, the first step was the increase in demand that obliged us to shake our minds and try to see things from a different perspective. So even where the idea of working without lead, like all old chemicals, was seen like something that could solve every kind of problem. But again, I have already said it, 20 years ago, we could start working without it. I don't even perfectly remember the migration from lead to tin. And then very recently, for different reasons, but also sometimes pushed by the offer, the availability of different resins, because we are compounders. So we start from powders and we sell granules, much easier to use for pressing plants. We saw that it was possible to mutuate other solutions from other compounders. We are only compounding for vinyl records. And we saw that, for example, calcium zinc stabilized materials could be definitely easier to convert for pressing plants than we expected. To be honest, it was more than 10 years ago. And we were not looking for something more sustainable, but just for something made from a different starting point to a different kind of result. And we arrived to that. It seems that in Europe, again, to talk about Europe and Asia and America, that are, from our point of view, the three macro super areas. In Europe, we will probably be forced to ban tin stabilizers, but at the end of 2022, maybe, I'm not sure about that. But 10 years ago, again, we were not so green in our souls, but we landed to calcium zinc, and we are selling big quantities, let's say sometimes huge quantities of calcium zinc stabilized materials to the US, to Canada, or to China. So it's not a European topic anymore. Technically speaking, it seems customers can appreciate those different materials even in other areas. Sometimes we arrived to match directly in other areas, not in Europe, what the majors asked to the market, the market of customers of ours. And we realized that other, let's say, not perfectly clean additives have been used in a period where we thought they were banned. This is probably the last step. We still have to advertise a little bit better. Just to give you an idea, that is sometimes a little bit funny for the experts like Domenic. It's not funny at all, but soybean oil can help the process. So we might think here in Italy it's almost 6 p.m. so it's aperitif time, and soybean oil, Chinese food, and so on. You can see that I'm eating a lot. But probably, you know, just last thing, you probably Brian is still missing my picture for this event, and I was trying to get a picture of myself under a shower of granules, because they are really, from the formulation point of view, they are really much safer than they were only a few years ago.
Thank you. Sharon, can you tell us what your observations of this market have been in recent years? Do you see it becoming more green? We need you to.
I usually do that at least once every every video conference. Yeah, I think we've seen a big shift in public perception about anything made of plastic. And unfortunately, I think there's a lurch towards all plastics are evil. And that's not been helpful in public debate and education around what is, you know, what is sustainable and what isn't. So, you know, I think that what we're trying to do is work with the public and work with perceptions and understanding about what the real impact is of our consumption. And that right now it's shifting sand as technology is getting better, and as we're getting more efficient, and as we're getting cleaner production methods, carbon footprints are coming down, transport is becoming less of an issue, packaging is becoming greener. But we are thinking more about circular design, like you've just been talking there about. So carbon footprinting it's not an exact science, it's shifting sand. And what we're also seeing is that compared to other technologies, so I think there's a perception that vinyl as a format is not as green as digital. And digital is clumped together with things like paperless offices. And so I think in people's heads, it has no carbon footprint because there's no physical thing there that you can tangibly hold. But actually, it comes down to consumer habits and what you're going to do with that format. So if you're going to kind of listen to a track over and over and over again, it takes, I think, sort of back of the envelope calculations, I reckon it's about 27 times, and you might as well bought the physical format for it to be equal. If you've got music, I mean, people who buy vinyl, it's a collector thing. The other part of this is what happens to it at the end of its life and at the end of the cycle. And if you're keeping something, vinyl is not a disposable item. It's something you keep and you treasure and you listen to. It's not something you listen to once, hopefully, and just throw away. Even if you don't like the track, you hopefully give it away or resell it or something. So you know, it's that consumer relationship that we have a long way to go, and around that that whole life cycle, all the things that we're talking about today. And I think the consumer wants greener products. So you're talking about the perceptions around reused and around using waste product so we're seeing, you know, people trying to produce things from recycled materials. The problem that we have there is that there's only so far you can go without affecting the quality. So vinyl's a very precise product, we know this, and we wouldn't be very happy if we got it home and put it on the record player and it's crackly and fizzing because, you know, it's got all sorts of stuff in there. So yeah, there's a balance, but I think the technology for reprocessing plastics is reprocessing plastic doesn't just mean grinding it up these days and using it. There's ways of unzipping polymers and using greener feedstocks from waste material so that the materials can be as good as the virgin.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. So we have a lot of activity going on in the chat room, and that's really nice. So we do have from Dave, we have a question regarding the vinyl from one of the major suppliers for the US, you know, whether it's quote unquote clean. And I'm just curious whether, and also definitely attendees, if you want to chime in on this, what your experiences have been as well. Anyone have any comments about that?
Well, we use it's called Neotech now. We use the non-leaded Neotech formula. So if Dave's referring to clean is lead-free, then yes, they do sell lead-free formulations.
Well, actually, somewhat related to that, on the recyclability, some of the things that you were talking about, Matt. This, I guess, is a good question for Domenic. So I guess it's a fallacy to think that even a lead contained record can't be recycled. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a fallacy. It can be recycled.
Right.
The question is, in what applications will it go? Certain applications, whether it's because of regulation or because of performance or because of the potential for exposures, that sort of thing. Those types of materials can be used in and the other one is in what concentrations, right? And so the recycling industry is really good about understanding those variables, understanding how to recapture and recycle those materials that do have lead stabilizers in them. And I think it's just a matter of, again, looking for where the right outlet is. Now, obviously, if you have a closed loop where if you can take even post-consumer vinyl records, I heard about something just in the last couple of weeks where there was a big flood at what was already an estate sale, somebody selling off a collection. The flood happened after the estate sale occurred. And then there's, about 3,000 LPs that were just kind of in this, flood area. Well, what are you going to do with that, right? Recycling is the best option if you can find a way to do it. So we instantly got connected. We connected the person with the estate sale who was managing it to one of the big recyclers to try to figure out, is there a solution that we can work with here? Now, that's post-consumer. That's in the extreme case of post-consumer. Like, you obviously, if somebody wants to get rid of a collection, they don't want to sell it, they just want to, recycle it, we can do that too. It is a matter of mixed materials. So you're going to have the packaging concerns, you're going to have the label concerns, the adhesives, but the stabilizers and other things in the formulation, the recyclers can handle all of that. It is just a matter of where the material ends up. And they are very selective working with product manufacturers. One last comment on that is that our industry is just now embarking within ASTM, if anybody's familiar with that standards development organization, about how to characterize vinyl recycled content so that product manufacturers know what they're getting, that there's transparency there beyond just the buy-sell relationship, that we try to bring some new language that's consistent to the industry so that the quality of that material is very well understood before the buy-sell transaction ever even takes place. So these are things that are happening in the industry. And to go back to your original question, absolutely, yes, that can be recycled.
And also, I get back to what Sharon was saying. Education, I think, is really, really key. And obviously, your organization, Domenic, that's what you do in terms of the education side of things. So, I mean, as an industry as a whole, well, I guess having this webinar is actually helping put us in the right direction as far as the education side of things. So I want to get to one of the questions that came up in the chat from Will. Do you use much reground material in vinyl? And to what extent does using reground material impact the carbon footprint of a product?
Is this specific for vinyl records? I'm not sure. I can't really comment on that.
Yeah, I think, I think Will Will, can you just comment if that's what you mean in the chat? Yes, he's talking about vinyl records. How about Sharon? Do you have any comment about that, or Matt?
Yeah, I've got a quickly comment. And the vinyl that's used every time you make something. So the first time you use that material, there'll be a carbon cost with it. that carbon cost is accounted for once. If you reprocess that, you're effectively using that material and again, and then subtracting that carbon from that account. So yes, it will definitely have a positive impact on the carbon footprint. But of course, that's not the whole story. There's the whole carbon footprint of the whole process, the transport and everything else. So really, and there's another comment just further down about the whole, the whole process, the packaging and everything. Really, if you want to dig down into how much carbon and the impact of the product, really a life cycle analysis with all of this included is something you need to do. But every time you displace a virgin material with a reused one, you're going to be chipping away at that carbon cost of that product. And for every material, it has a very different carbon cost. And you can see those reported online. You can work that out by weight of the product.
Thanks. So we have James actually entering the conversation with a particular question. James, can you unmute and also show us yourself? Thanks.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, so it was really, and hi to everybody and hi to Matt. We've done some work with you a long time ago. You might remember that hairy vinyl we did. So it was really, I work with Karen at Keele Production. We're a broker, so we deal with a lot of plants around Europe. And also we've got a groove in the States. And we've been looking at the whole, as Sharon just mentioned, the whole life cycle is kind of important. So the plastic that goes into the records is a really important part of this, but there's all these other factors, the amount of energy that goes in to pressing the records, the onward transportation, and you touched on the packaging earlier. Does anybody have an idea about how those kind of pieces tend to split out? Because the PVC clearly is a big important part of that, but there's all of these other aspects that should be factored in when you're looking at sustainability overall, right?
Well, sure. I mean, one of the things that we really focus on when we're looking at supplier relationships or particular components that we need to order in for certain packages or whatnot is where are they coming from? Is there a way to get them as local as possible? We try to source as much as we can within the state of Ohio. And a big part of that is to reduce on transportation costs, but at the same time, it's reducing the carbon footprint when there's less of a distance involved. So yes, we definitely think about those sorts of things with everything we do. Obviously, in any type of business, not just making records, but manufacturing in particular or other types, there are going to be some areas that you're just not going to be able to avoid. So how do you make up for that if you're conscious about your carbon footprint? And that's with carbon offsets. So for, I think, 5 or 6 years at this point, we have been contributing to the carbon fund, recognizing that there's going to always be some part of our operation that there's just no way around it. There's no way around the carbon footprint. So we can at least offset it with contributions. And then recently, in the past couple of years, UPS has come up with the option of doing carbon offsets with every shipment that you do. So you pay a little bit extra for each shipment, and it's supposed to bring the shipment down to a net zero by the offset. So we've been using those for anything that we're shipping via UPS as well.
Thanks for that, Matt. One thing that we haven't really talked about, and this goes to this previous question that was just asked from the floor, is how some of the processes as well as the technology have changed. So for example, Viral has the steamless pressing lines, which obviously would reduce the amount of energy being consumed during the process. On the other hand, many pressing plants still use 50-year-old machines that do require steam. As well as, there's also green vinyl in the Netherlands is pushing to sort of remove the plating process step in production. Any panelists have any comments about that? No? Okay. So we do have another question from the floor. let me just find that. Sorry. My
Sorry,
eyes.
to fill the gap.
Yeah.
From experience from visiting vendors around Europe 20 years ago, as well as recently, the operations certainly have changed. So I remember walking into the old ASL plant in London, probably close to 18, 19 years ago now, and it was horrendous. You were sticking to the floor, it was hot, it was steamy, it was smelly. And it really kind of put you off buying vinyl records in a way, because you saw where it came from and it was just grubby and horrible. But walk into any of the current plants now, even the newer ones, it's completely different. They are clean, they are tidy operations. It doesn't smell anymore. Yes, it's still hot because obviously they still have to use steam, but as I said earlier, there is this closed circuit that they're also employing to make use of the energy that is being generated in the process. And you have these little boutique manufacturers now that even have cafes next to their presses. So it's not as sticky and horrible as it used to be anymore. And the same goes, as I said earlier, for the material. So I think a lot has been cleaned up, and at the end of the day, we're making a product that is meant to last, as Matt was saying earlier, something that people want, that they want to keep, that they're not going to put into landfill. So I think all of that needs to be considered now.
Yeah, hey, Nika, just to add on to that a little bit, one of the things the industry is really driving toward is to partner with Operation Clean Sweep, which some people may be aware of. It's basically an effort to get to zero uncontrolled pellet releases from any kind of production facility. So all of our direct members on the resin production side have already committed to it. We have it as part of our stewardship policy at the Vinyl Institute. It's also one of our guiding principles that somebody can verify to make sure that they're doing the right things with respect to pellet management and protecting waterways. And one of our roles as a supporter of Operation Clean Sweep is to encourage other production facilities to adopt Operation Clean Sweep principles. So consider this my encouragement for the day. If you're a record pressing facility and you're not aware of it, I would go to Operation Clean Sweep's website. You can Google it and figure out where it is, and just take a look at what some of those commitments are and things that you can do. And it's not like there's these complicated, you have to put in some sort of engineering control system for protecting the water. It's simple cleanup, and they'll even tell you the same thing. It's just about keeping the plants clean so that you can have other services people walk through and that sort of thing. So I thought that was a great example of how things are cleaner.
Thorsten, are you with us? I'm sure you just said get up. All right, well, let me get back to Roger's question here, and we'll come back to Thorsten. So Roger's question is, it's not so much a vinyl record issue. He wants to know if there's any comment on recycling compact discs composed of PVC sandwiched with an aluminum substrate. A lot of us came from the CD world. And I thought it was interesting what Nika was saying in terms of how clean a lot of the new plants. I know, like Third Man Pressing, for example, is like that. It brought back the memories I had of the clean rooms and the white lab coats that the early CD production facilities had. But to Roger's question here, how about in terms of recycling CDs? That, I guess that's a polycarbonate based an optical disc, right? But to what extent, and Brian, do you have any things you might want to add to this conversation? Because I know you were there with me in the early days of the CD production.
Well, I can say with CDs, they can be very easy to recycle due to the fact that if they haven't been metallized, which is that reflective layer that goes onto the disc, they can be very simply reground and put back into the process. If it does have the metallization layer to it, that becomes a little bit more complicated. But like with vinyl, there are other applications that you can move, we'll say, a metallized disc to. I've seen, we'll say, the recycled material most specifically go to places like Asia, where they use it in different other components and it's repurposed again. So in that respect, yeah, there are a lot of different applications that you can use. And the same would be with also the packaging that goes along with the CD as well. Most CD cases, I believe they're made from polypropylene or in many respects, and that could be reused also. I just wanted to just clarify something also that you said, Larry, in regards to green vinyl. Green vinyl is, we'll say, a different manufacturing process that doesn't require steam. It's done in an injection molding process. And I just wanted to raise that because I know Harm would probably want to point that out specifically. And they are not using PVC at all in their process. They're using a different formulation other than PVC. And HD vinyl is another green application, which is the one that is not, we'll say, using the plating process.
Oh,
so I just wanted to clarify those 2 points there. And I'm sure that those folks can talk a lot more about their technologies. But just for the point of just having some knowledge, I just wanted to express that. And I see.
I also just want to correct something you just said about polypropylene. That's actually for the DVD packaging. Is the jewel cases are polystyrene.
Polystyrene, that's right.
Right,
Yes.
right, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thorsten's been very patient, so please enter the conversation, Thorsten.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm not sure if this is going
Yes.
to work because I'm working with my web browser. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So there are two.
Now you're breaking up a little bit.
I think
now it's you, Larry.
Thorsten's having a technical issue because I keep seeing his video speeding up and slowing down, unfortunately.
Oh.
Maybe I can ask another question in the meantime, and I want to kind of direct this to Ugo. What is it in regards to, we'll say, importing, we'll say, material that has been manufactured maybe potentially by a US company that's not necessarily using lead-free material into other countries? Does that pose problems in sending that materials to other countries?
I'm sorry to answer your question, Brian, mentioning the bloody coronavirus, because it changed everything also in the perspective of delivering our compounds that are well appreciated, as I mentioned, also because they are calcium zinc stabilized, not all of them, of course, not yet. Delivering them to different continents. It works. It probably works very well because of the experience that we acquired along the years. For example, we have to think that PVC, and again, I'm asking Domenic to help me. PVC can, PVC in this case with vinyl acetate can survive almost everything, but not heat, not too long. So shipping very far means using 40 feet or 20 feet containers on vessels where the temperature can arrive to very high levels. But just to give you an idea of what this system could be developed until the corona arrival, we have been always using insulation kit that can be reused, of course. And we are working in the same conditions of shipping wines in bottles. But recently we had not trying to help my pricing or pricing of competitors and colleagues of mine, but we had to face unbelievable, and I think a lot of you already know that, unbelievable cost increases in shipments. Let's say that going east from Europe, we arrived to double the initial cost before Corona, BC, before Corona. I'm a little bit blasphemy. And going in the other direction, let's say that it's not yet twice, but plus 70%.
And one of the other things that I'd like to comment on is that it's very interesting, Larry, you said in the beginning, with, we'll say, the capacity being so tight that we could actually see, we'll say, a bunch, we're short probably about 200 million records per year based on the demand. And with that, I'm seeing that a lot of, we'll say, records come in from Europe that are being pressed to try to fill that demand. But now that Europe seems to be tight, also I see that a lot of European companies are asking, can these be pressed in the United States and then shipped back over to Europe? And I guess that's what I was kind of alluding to before. You know, the cost of shipping it back to the United States is probably horrific these days due to coronavirus, as you mentioned, Hugo. And then, yeah, the customs and immigration, or the customs issues due to the fact that there is, we'll say, potentially lead maybe in those vinyls that are being produced in the United States, which wouldn't allow it actually to go in. So it does cause some concerns in that bi-directional issue. But it's good to hear that, we'll say, most of the manufacturers are trying to meet the expectations of clean, environmental friendly products moving forward. And what would it take, would it be possible? And I think this was a question that we wanted to do a poll on also. Would companies be willing to pay more for a more environmentally friendly product? And I don't know if that's something, oh, there you go, Andre. I'm curious to know the answer on that. So I guess that would be a good time to ask this question now. I know certainly that there are concerns that maybe vinyl is becoming too expensive. So that's one of the reasons also I'm interested to know if it would be one of those things that people would pay more money for, or are we moving in the right direction by looking at this as more of a concern? Because I think one of the folks mentioned before, and I think this was you, Nika, it was that we are not producing records to be thrown away. We're producing records to be saved. And I think that's where we all kind of think that we're going, is that not normally are we disposing these records, we're going to keep them, even if they don't sound good. I'm going to keep it in my shelf and my collection because that's the type of person that I am.
Yeah, I mean, there was a comment earlier to the first poll that we did. There's someone here who is a record collector and who has 10,000 records at home. I mean, would you ever consider getting rid of them, i.e. putting them in the bin? Because I genuinely think you would rather sell them or find someone who will properly dispose of them for you if you really needed to get rid of them fast for whatever reason, than just take them to your local tip.
Yeah, Nikki, you're right about that, because I was once quoted by a reporter in the Guardian, and it said that I threw out my collection, and I didn't throw out my collection. I did sell my collection. So I can relate exactly what you're talking about.
See, you don't strike me as the throwing it away kind of guy.
No, I mean, I was ready for a change. This was about 12 years ago. It was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made, getting rid of my collection. I've recreated my collection since then. But we have a question from Robin Raymond, going back to the green vinyl records that Brian was mentioning before. And the question is, will green vinyl be able to pour sheets so that short run lathe cutters could have an alternative to PETG? And I know we do have on in the chat someone, I guess, from green vinyl. Is that correct, Pierre? And Pierre, would you want to join us live?
Actually, Harm is here too. Harm says that they're working on blank sheets. So I guess that answers the question.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Should we try to go back to Thorsten to see if his audio is any better?
Well, he just sent the question. He says, talking about the use of revinyl that requires the plant to keep pressing, to keep the pressing floor as clean as possible to avoid pollution, which is a good thing. Right, it's actually a statement. There's another thing here from Joel asking, is anybody using green vinyl yet? I guess that would be more of a question for a company like a person like Nika at this point. Have you started using green vinyl?
We're talking to them, like many others, I hear. But maybe Harm wants to come on here, or Pierre, to give an update on where they are.
I'm on holiday, but I work today. We are testing some colors today, so see my nails are all dirty. So how far are we? Yeah, music-wise, sound-wise, process-wise, we're done. Our record is, yeah, really. If we look at the test results, if we look at the hertz that we measure compared to a regular vinyl, we have higher values and lower values. The only thing what is breaking us up right now is the label, because I don't want to have a paper label and I don't really want a sticker. So this is a little bit, I bought a printer and I'm having software issues with the printer. But there's a software guy now 24, yeah, not 24/7, but 5 times a week, five days a week. He's working on the software issues. And if we fix that, then the process of the vinyl is done. And in the meanwhile, in these coming 3 weeks, we're going to add another robot and we're going to do the packaging, the inner sleeve and the outer sleeve. So it's going to be a full automated line. So you put in for a single sleeve, single outer sleeve. So what we're going to do, you put in the stampers, you're adding the color and you can swap the color of the record in 10 discs. You don't have to clean the barrel because our material is always the same. We just swap the dye that we color the plastic with, and then we print it automatically. So the future thing is going to be automatic numbering, serial numbering, barcodes, QR codes. But because we had some issues with the software, with communication problems between 4 computers that are talking to each other, printing wise, operation wise, PLC wise. So, and this is what we're fixing right now. And if that's done, then we have no thing. So yes, we can start making records. We already did some test orders. Today I tested white, really white, red, blue, green, pink, all those colors because they have different pigments. So you will hear the pigment back in the record, in the sound, if you don't do it correctly. So if the pigment is too big, you will hear it back in the sound with crackles and ticks and clicks. For the rest, yeah, I'm very positive, and I really have big artists and also a lot of labels that are really interested in the records. So we're going to do some test orders left and right just to see how they drop into the market. That's a little bit where we are right now.
Thanks, Harm. Kevin, you're standing by. Can you unmute, please, and ask your question?
Hi, everyone. It's Kev from Dublin Vinyl, also of Vinyl Technologies that make the presses. Hugo, you won't remember me, but we've met before. Thanks for all your help over the years. So I just wanted to return to a couple of points, really, about regrind, recycling. So we regrind here at Dublin Vinyl, and I've worked in a few other factories that also regrind. And I just wanted to make the point, which I made in the chat, which was, what's interesting is that we've not found any functional difference in the quality of record using regrind, meaning no audio quality difference or visual difference. And what it seems to be to us is more perception. So often we'll have clients that will ask for, or even sometimes insist on virgin PVC, and that's fine, we'll provide that. But where we can, we often do the vinyl version of the Pepsi challenge, where we send a bunch of records to a client and say, you know, have a listen to all these, tell us if you think there's any that are better or worse or any different, and we'll send them a few made from virgin and a few made from 100% recycled and a few made from a sort of 50-50 mix. And what's interesting is when you get the sort of information back over many clients, there's no one can tell the difference, basically. So what we try and do where we can, it's good business as well, because it's obviously cheaper to recycle the material, but is to kind of upsell that and say, look, you know, apart from us being able to offer you maybe a slightly better price because it's, you know, we're recycling material, it's also better environmentally, of course. So, and some, it tends to be the independent labels that are more on board. I mean, we've got a big contract with Universal, and they've just, in the contract, it's 100% virgin. So we're locked in. But where we can have those conversations, we kind of sell both the ecological benefits and the cost savings. And really, we've had nothing but positive responses on that. There's a whole question about the supply chain of PVC itself and all the other elements around it in terms of sleeving and stuff that we're looking into, how we can make our supply chain more sustainable. But yeah, we're a big advocate of trying to really push the regrind from the positive aspects of it. No qualitative difference and cost savings. Second point I wanted to make was just on distribution records, which was what we started to do is team up with factories around the world. Only a couple, but we'll do deals so that rather than ship records halfway around the world, we'll work in partnership with a different business, but you know, we'll cut a deal where they'll make records for us to distribute in their region, but on our behalf with our clients, and we'll do the same in reverse. And you know, that again, it's both a good business decision in terms of it will often save a bunch of time, but also cuts down on the carbon footprint of the actual haulage. So yeah, just wanted to make those quick 2 points. Yeah, the last thing I will say is just margins. We all probably know those in the manufacturing side. The margins on records is really slim. So I think one of the things that holds the whole industry back is because those margins are so slim, it slowed the investment into sustainable solutions. I'm sure we're all watching what's happening with green vinyl. We certainly are, in the hope that they absolutely nail it, and then we can all start using what they do, right? But it's also got to be a cost we can bear, and maybe it's a sort of economies of scale thing. But we're only a small outfit. We've got 4 presses, 2 warm tones and 2 Phoenix alphas. But my feeling is if there's opportunities there to sort of network between perhaps those smaller factories, I mean, GZ Media probably will just laugh at us all, but there might be chances for sort of economies of scale to be shared across the network. So extending that idea of kind of, we'll make some of your records if you can make some of ours in your region. I have the feeling there's chances to share, you know, pool resources maybe, and collectively commit to a certain amount of vinyl from the most sustainable suppliers, that kind of thing.
Your point, Kevin, about the sound quality, I thought was really interesting, because just a few days ago, I was speaking with a reissue label that basically admitted that it's more of a marketing decision to say that it's 100% virgin vinyl versus, you know, regrind, and that it's really negligible to hear the difference. Even audiophiles might not be able to tell the difference.
I think both with a really, really valid point, Kevin, actually, and what you just said was interesting about the 100% using 100% regrind. I think a lot of education needs to happen in some sense so that the consumer understands that this is perfectly acceptable. Because at the moment, people think, well, this is recycled, this is not the best material, so therefore I'm going to have cracks and pops and all sorts on the record. But if we can prove the opposite, and in fact, the same goes for green vinyl, we need consumer acceptance before this will take off. And then I have no doubt that it will. But we need to approach this with caution, I guess, and give the people the tools to see the difference, and do a blind test like you just explained as well with the Pepsi challenge. I'm sure a lot wouldn't be able to tell the difference between virgin vinyl, recycled, and green vinyl even.
We have a question. We have a question from Brent. He says he understands that there's a company working on identifying a process to create vinyl using recycled plastic, like that can be found floating around the ocean. He wonders if the only concern is, will the process of converting that plastic into vinyl have a larger carbon footprint than the current processes used? Good question there.
Hey, Larry. So I was just typing up the last letters in the response, but I'll answer it here for everybody. So it's an interesting concept. I am aware of at least one PVC related ocean plastic collection effort. It's in Alaska. It focuses on abandoned commercial fishing buoys. There's not a lot of PVC applications, with that sort of ocean plastic problem. It's not generally a widely used single-use plastic. It's really focused, as you saw the pie chart earlier, it's very focused on durables. So, with that in mind, I'm not sure if, general ocean plastics collection efforts that are used, looking at polypropylene, polyethylene, some of those others, would really be the right material for a record that has good sound quality. I did see that there was one that was sort of a gimmicky thing to say that it was an ocean plastics record, but that's not what people want to listen to necessarily. So I think you have to understand your audience and who that would be. But that being said, it is an interesting concept. And if we found, so I am talking to the folks in Alaska, and if we found some way to, find out if those materials were compatible with the kinds of materials that you would use in a vinyl record, then sure, we can, that's what we do. We connect people, we convene these conversations, and we try to get things like this moving. So happy to explore that further.
Okay, so Kevin, thanks for also mentioning that there's literally no difference in terms of noise, floor, surface noise. And also, I just want to mention that our last poll said that 52% of consumers would be willing to pay more for a record. So I think that, that it is a sustainable record, fully sustainable. Why don't we just go around the core panelists and see if you have any closing statements that sort of, sum up everything that we've talked about, or anything more we hadn't talked about yet. Domenic, you want to start?
Absolutely. First of all, I just appreciate this opportunity. I think it's fantastic to hear that this is a focus area for the vinyl record industry. I really do want to connect with everybody that's on the panel, going beyond this, and certainly anybody that's on the call as an attendee. And if there's anything that we can do to continue to help promote vinyl sustainability within this industry, we would love to help do that.
Okay, Matt.
Sure. Basically, just want to drive home that, we all want to make high quality records that last a long time. And fortunately, PVC does last a long time. So it seems to me that, to keep things sustainable, the focus needs to be on high quality records.
Ugo, how about you?
Again, I'm thinking to what we will be doing after this strange months, if and when this strange period will end. So let's work to have it more sustainable, also because frequently green and money are going in the same direction in this age, and see what will be around the corner.
Okay, Sharon?
Remember to unmute. Yeah, I think using sustainable materials is not straightforward. It's not simple with loads of sectors, and you can do a big statement, and that's okay. That makes a statement, but people will be happy to pay more if it's genuinely better. It makes them feel good, and they've got a good product. But it has to be a good product. So the risk is lurching forward too quickly, producing something that's not as good quality, and the public will knee jerk, and they'll be, oh, that's not good, and they'll revert back to wanting virgin vinyl again. But I do wonder how much support the industry gets from governments. That's something we haven't spoke about today, is the support for the sector, like other sectors, and there is R&D funding available for different things, and this, what you're talking about here, is innovating your process, trying to move towards more sustainable products, more innovation, more sort of cleaner, tighter processes. And I think that's something that the industry can work together and have a voice. And so groups like this are ideal for bringing those voices together to really collectively shout about what you need to meet that demand too.
And Nika, any final words?
I can only underline what Matt just said. We are making a high quality, durable product, or at least that's the aim, for people to enjoy for a long time and to keep in their collection for a long time.
Thank you. Also, Thorsten had just added about the recycled plastic conversation, that he's right. The exact ingredients are mostly unknown. And as a plant, you'd have to guarantee that you meet the legal requirements in programs such as Sony's Green Partner Initiative. And before we will talk a little bit about the optical media world. And I do remember that retailers such as Walmart had very specific requirements in terms of what they expected in terms of packaging, for example, to try to move into the greener realm.
Not just Walmart.
Okay.
There are a bunch of retailers in Europe, and I'm sure there are more than just Walmart in the US as well, that require any supplier to sign pages and pages of conformity declarations that certain materials aren't used in their product, etc., and that they're safe for the consumer. So yeah, a lot of this is already driven by retail. So not having lead and cadmium in material is part of those declarations, for example.
And also in the chat, Kevin just mentions that you brought up the government side of things, that the Irish government has been giving support in terms of pressing in terms of sustainability. So that's a nice, I hope all governments actually think along those lines. Any final questions from anyone? I do want to point out that the presentation will be available on the mediatech.org. It's media-tech.org website for replay. All right, well, I guess with that, everyone have a rest of a good day. I know we're all over the world, so some of you might be close to night. So thank you everyone for attending. Brian, do you have any extra things you might want to talk about?
No. I just thank you to the panelists for taking your time to make this happen. I know we had a couple of technical challenges, but we're learning how to do this in a more interactive way. And I can tell you the replay will look great. So don't worry about seeing those errors in that. And yeah, just keep in mind that we're going to be doing this on a monthly basis leading up to the Making Vinyl, which will be in November. Our next webinar will be, as I mentioned earlier, for those that joined us early, which will be September 1st. We'll be talking about the audio cassettes. And then, of course, we are looking for people to submit, we'll say, ideas for presentations for the Making Vinyl Online in November, and as well as the Making Vinyl and the Physical World live event that we're planning for Frankfurt. So if you have an idea or if you want to speak, reach out to Larry and I. And Larry, thanks for running this too. Greatly appreciate all the hard work that you put into this. And I look forward to seeing you guys all again soon. Have a great weekend if we don't touch base again before then.
See you soon.
See you soon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello.